My name is Delaney Palmer, and I was 32 years old when my parents stole $80,000 from me. They didn't hack my bank account. They didn't drain a credit card. They walked into the vineyard where I'd booked my wedding and handed forged documents to the owner, authorization letters with my signature at the bottom. Except I never signed them. My father, a retired real estate attorney, wrote that signature himself. My mother's explanation was simple. You won't mind, your wedding isn't even confirmed. My wedding had been confirmed for 6 months. What none of them knew was this. The woman who owned that vineyard had been my college roommate's best friend in our computer science program. 2 hours after my parents left her office, she called me, laughing. Did you know, she said, that I went to college with you? What happened at my sister's birthday party 3 weeks later made the local news. But to understand the party, you need to understand the deposit. And to understand the deposit, you need to understand my family. Welcome back to Hidden Family Revenge. This is the channel where real family betrayals meet real consequences. If you've ever been the responsible child who got nothing in return, this one's for you. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. I grew up in a 4-bedroom house in Cedar Park, just north of Austin. 2 parents, 2 daughters. On paper, the Palmer family looked balanced. In practice, the scale never moved. My younger sister Brooke was what my mother called sensitive. What that meant in real terms was this. When Brooke cried, the house stopped. When Brooke failed a class, a tutor appeared. When Brooke wanted a car at 17, a car appeared. My parents called it support. I called it a pattern. I was the other daughter. The one who got straight A's and no reaction. The one who worked a campus job to cover textbooks because my parents said I was resourceful enough to figure it out. They paid Brooke's full tuition. I graduated with $40,000 in student loan debt and a GPA that nobody at home asked about. My mother had a phrase she used like a reflex. Delaney doesn't need help. She's always been fine. She said it to relatives, to neighbors, to Brooke. After a while, I started believing it. If I was fine, then all I had to do was keep being fine. Keep achieving. Keep proving that I deserved the same attention Brooke got by breathing. That was my flaw. Not naivety. Not people-pleasing. I was over-responsible. I carried everything because I thought if I carried enough, they'd finally notice the weight. My father's contribution was simpler. He nodded. At dinner, in arguments, in family decisions. He nodded along with whatever my mother said and went back to his files. Richard Palmer, real estate attorney, expert at drafting contracts and avoiding confrontation. There was one Thanksgiving I remember clearly. I was 24. I'd just landed my first engineering job, a position at a tech startup in Austin that had beaten out 300 other applicants for. I drove 3 hours to tell my parents in person. I walked through the door with a bottle of wine and the offer letter in my bag. Mom was on the phone with Brooke's landlord negotiating a late payment. Dad was reviewing a stack of documents at the kitchen table. I waited for a pause. When it came, I told them. Mom looked up from the phone. That's nice, honey. Can you help set the table? Your sister's running late. That was it. My entire celebration fit inside a sentence fragment and a request for silverware. I almost didn't invite them to the wedding. I typed the text 3 times and deleted it 3 times. Then I changed my mind. One more chance. That was always my mistake. I saved for 6 years. Every quarterly bonus went into a separate account. Every freelance project I took on weekends. Every time I skipped a vacation or drove the same car another year. $80,000, accumulated line by line in a spreadsheet I updated every Sunday morning with my coffee. The vineyard was called Stone Terrace. It sat on 40 acres in the hill country, about an hour west of Austin. Oak trees, older than the state. A stone patio that overlooked rolling hills and a small creek. They grew their own grapes, pressed their own wine, and hosted 12 events per year. 12. Getting a spot meant planning far ahead and paying up front. I visited 3 times before I booked. Walked the grounds, tasted the wine, sat on the terrace at sunset, and imagined 300 people watching me walk toward the life I'd built for myself. I wired the deposit directly to the venue. $80,000. It covered the exclusive weekend booking, Friday through Sunday, plus catering coordination, the wine package, and a coordinator. The confirmation arrived 2 weeks later. Cream-colored cardstock with the Vineyard logo embossed in copper. I framed it and set it on my desk at home. Some people keep trophies from college. I kept proof that 6 years of discipline meant something. I told my family the venue was handled. I didn't tell them how much. I didn't tell them where. I said, "The wedding is set," and moved on. Garrett, my fiancé, smiled when I told him, "Whatever you want, babe." He didn't ask the name of the venue. He didn't ask the price. He didn't ask anything. I should have noticed that. Brooke was turning 30. In my family, that was not a birthday. That was an event. My mother announced the planning 6 months in advance. She created a group chat. Brooke, Mom, Dad, 2 of Brooke's friends, and me. The chat was called Brooke's Big 3-0. Within 2 weeks it had 400 messages, flower options, color palettes, menu tastings, guest lists sorted by tier. I muted the chat after day 3. My mother started asking me questions I didn't think much of at the time. How big is the venue you booked? Does it have a terrace? And, what's the parking situation for your wedding place? I thought she was making conversation. Mothers ask about weddings. That's what they do. Then the invitation arrived, a gold foil envelope, Brooke's name in calligraphy across the front. Inside, heavy cardstock. Celebrating 30 years of Brooke. Black tie, live band, 3-course dinner. The date was 3 weeks away. At the bottom, in small italic print, was the venue. Stone Terrace Vineyard. I stared at that line for a long time. Then I read it again. Then a third time. My mother had never mentioned booking Stone Terrace. Brooke had never mentioned it. Nobody in the group chat had discussed it. And Stone Terrace only hosted 12 events per year. Every slot was booked through the following spring. Every slot except mine. I set the invitation on the kitchen counter. Garrett was in the other room watching television. I didn't say anything. I picked up my phone and scrolled to the Vineyard's contact number. My thumb hovered. Then I put the phone down. I didn't need to call the venue. Because the venue was about to call me. It was a Tuesday evening, 7:43. I was cleaning dishes when my phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number with a Hill Country area code. Delaney? It's Margot Ellison from CS 301. I hadn't heard that name in 9 years. Margot Ellison. We'd shared a computer science lab sophomore year. She'd been the one who always brought 2 coffees to the 8 in the morning sessions. One for her, one for whoever looked like they needed it most. We'd signed our names on 50 group project reports side by side. Margot, how did you get this number? You're in my system. You booked a wedding at my vineyard. That was when I learned that Margot had inherited Stone Terrace from her grandmother 2 years ago. She'd left her software job in San Francisco, moved back to the Hill Country, and turned the vineyard into an event venue. Listen, Margot said, I need to ask you something. A couple came into my office this afternoon. Older, well-dressed, said they were your parents. They had a signed authorization letter requesting the transfer of your booking to a different event, a birthday party for someone named Brooke Palmer. My hand tightened around the sponge. The signature on the authorization looked close, Margot continued. But here's the thing. I know your handwriting, Delaney. We signed 50 project cover sheets together. Your P doesn't loop. The one on this letter does. She paused. Then she laughed. Not a cruel laugh, a disbelieving one. Did you know that I went to college with you? I set the sponge down, dried my hands on the towel, sat on the kitchen floor. I didn't authorize anything, I said. That isn't my signature. I know, Margot said. That's why I called. After I hung up, I didn't move for 11 minutes. I know because I watched the microwave clock. Then I opened my laptop. I went through my text messages with my mother, year by year. Not reading for content, reading for pattern. The requests always started the same way. Delaney, your sister needs... followed by a dollar amount disguised as a favor. Brooke's car down payment, $3,000, taken from a savings account my parents had co-signed when I was 18. Brooke's apartment security deposit, $2,000, wired with a promise it was, just until she gets back on her feet. That was 3 years ago. The money never came back. There were smaller ones, a dental bill, a parking ticket, a weekend trip Brooke really needed for her mental health, each one trivial on its own. Together, they formed a ledger of a family that treated one daughter like a bank and the other like a beneficiary. The vineyard deposit was the largest withdrawal, but it was not the first. I closed the laptop, picked up my phone, called Garrett. "Hey babe, what's up? Did you know about the deposit?" Silence. 4 seconds. I counted. "Your mom mentioned something, but she said you agreed." He didn't say, "What deposit?" He didn't say, "What are you talking about?" He went straight to defense, which meant he already knew the accusation. "She said I agreed to give up my $80,000 wedding deposit for Brooke's birthday party." I mean, she made it sound like it was worked out. Worked out by who? Another pause. Shorter this time. "I don't know the details, Del." I hung up. I didn't slam the phone. I set it down gently. Then I opened a new folder on my laptop and started saving screenshots. The next morning, I found it. Garrett and I shared a laptop for household things. Bills, grocery lists, a joint budget spreadsheet. He'd left his email logged in. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I was looking for everything. Third page of his inbox. A PDF attachment from 8 months ago. Subject line, loan agreement, Palmer to Ross. $45,000. Personal loan from Richard Palmer to Garrett Ross. No bank involved. No institution. Just my father's legal stationery, my father's signature blocks, and Garrett's name on the borrower line. Purpose listed, business investment. Garrett was a salaried sales manager. He had no business. He had no investment. What he had was a debt that made him obedient. I sat with that document for a long time. The math wasn't complicated. My parents lent Garrett $45,000 without telling me. That debt gave them something better than money. It gave them compliance. When they told Garrett about the deposit transfer, he didn't argue. He didn't warn me. He stayed quiet because quiet was cheaper than repayment. I didn't confront him. I saved the PDF to an encrypted folder. Then I opened the booking confirmation. Cream cardstock, copper embossing. Still framed on my desk. Still in my name. I texted Margot. "Don't process the transfer, I need 3 weeks." Her reply came in under a minute. "Take your time, the vineyard isn't going anywhere." 3 weeks. That was how long until Brooke's birthday party at the venue my parents had stolen from me, using a signature my father had forged on letterhead he designed himself. 3 weeks was enough. Margot sent me a name. Claire Nguyen. Attorney. Civil litigation and fraud. Claire's office was on the 4th floor of a building on Congress Avenue in downtown Austin. Small reception area. No decorations except a framed bar admission certificate and a succulent on the windowsill. The kind of office that doesn't need to impress because the work speaks for itself. I brought everything. The booking confirmation, the forged authorization letter, or rather, Margot's photocopy of it, the loan agreement from Garrett's email, a printout of the text messages with my mother spanning 6 years. Claire read through each document without speaking. She wore reading glasses and turned pages with the precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. When she finished, she removed her glasses. "Your father drafted that authorization letter." "How do you know?" "The legal language. Hereby authorized to act on behalf of the named party for the purpose of event transfer and deposit reassignment." That's not how a normal person writes. That's real estate boilerplate. He used his own templates. She set the papers in a neat stack. "Your options are straightforward. Civil suit for fraud and forgery. Criminal complaint. Forgery is a 3rd-degree felony in Texas, and if we can prove your fiancé knew about the forged documents, there's a concealment angle. What do you recommend?" "The party is in 3 weeks. If we file the civil complaint now and serve papers at the event, every guest becomes a witness to their response. Their reaction, whatever it is, gets documented by 300 people." I looked at the stack of papers on her desk. 6 years of saving, 8 months of Garrett's secret debt. A lifetime of being the daughter who didn't need anything. Do it, I said. The hardest part wasn't the legal filing, it wasn't the evidence gathering. It was sitting across from my mother at Sunday dinner and smiling while she talked about napkin colors. I'm thinking gold, she said, holding up a sample. Gold with ivory accents. Elegant but warm. That sounds beautiful, Mom. Brooke nodded from across the table. I want it to feel like a gala, like something people remember. They will, I said. And I meant it. My father sat at the head of the table, cutting his steak into precise squares. He hadn't looked at me directly since I'd arrived. He talked to Garrett about golf. He talked to Brooke about her playlist. He talked to my mother about the flower budget. He talked around me the way you talk around an object you've already moved out of the way. I noticed the party budget expanding in real time. My mother mentioned a live string quartet, then a cocktail hour with a craft bar, then custom monogrammed favors for every guest. I did the arithmetic in my head. What they were describing cost well over $100,000. The deposit I'd paid was $80,000. They'd added their own money on top. They were investing in Brooke's image with my stolen savings as the foundation. After dinner, Garrett squeezed my hand in the car. You okay? You were quiet tonight. Just tired. I drove home in silence, parked, sat in the driveway for 5 minutes. Then I pulled out my phone and recorded a voice memo. Every detail from dinner, the napkin colors, the budget numbers. The way my father's knife paused on his steak when my mother mentioned the venue. Evidence doesn't always come in envelopes. Sometimes it comes in napkin samples. I washed my face, brushed my teeth, and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back was the same one who'd been sitting at that dinner table since childhood. Same chair, same role. The difference now was that the chair had an expiration date. Margot was thorough. In the week that followed, she delivered everything Claire needed. First, her copy of the forged authorization letter, time-stamped with the date Richard and Linda had brought it to her office. Second, security camera footage from the vineyard's reception area. 37 seconds of my parents walking through the front door, my father carrying a leather folder, my mother in a cream blazer smiling at the receptionist. Third, an email chain. 3 messages between Linda Palmer and the vineyard's event coordinator, discussing the Palmer family event. In the second email, my mother wrote, "We'd like to add a cocktail hour extension. Can you send an updated invoice to this email?" She'd given her own email, not mine. She'd been corresponding with the venue directly, under the assumption that the transfer was complete. It wasn't. Margot had never processed it. Claire added her own layer. She hired a forensic handwriting analyst, standard practice for fraud cases. The expert needed 5 business days. On day 4, the report arrived. I read the summary out loud to Claire in her office. The questioned signature exhibits consistent deviation from the known exemplars in stroke pressure, baseline alignment, and letter formation, specifically the uppercase P, which contains a closed loop absent in all 12 known samples from the subject. Translation: my father's P loops. Mine doesn't. The signature was his. Claire organized everything into a timeline: 12 years of financial transfers, the deposit, the forgery, Garrett's loan, the email chain, the security footage, the handwriting analysis. She printed the summary and set it on her desk. "This isn't a one-time fraud," she said. "This is a pattern of financial exploitation spanning more than a decade." I looked at the stack. It weighed less than a pound. It carried everything. I needed one more thing: confirmation that Garrett knew. I didn't ask him directly. People who are hiding something rehearse their denials. I needed the unrehearsed version. It was a Wednesday evening. We were cooking dinner together. His turn to chop, mine to season. I kept my voice casual, the kind of tone you use when you're asking about weekend plans. "Your mom seems really excited about Brooke's party at the vineyard." Garrett's knife paused on the onion. Half a second, then resumed. "Yeah, it's going to be great. The vineyard, where our wedding is booked." He didn't look up. "I'm sure they worked it out with the venue," Worked it out. Not, wait, what? Not, that doesn't make sense. Not confusion, understanding. He already knew the problem and had already accepted the solution, the one where my money paid for my sister's party and I wasn't supposed to ask questions. I changed the subject to grocery shopping. He relaxed. I memorized his exact words. That night, after he fell asleep, I opened the shared laptop. His email was still logged in. I searched Linda Palmer. 47 results. I scrolled to one from 3 weeks ago, from my mother to Garrett, forwarded from the vineyard's coordinator. The venue is taken care of. Don't mention the deposit to Delaney. She'll understand later. She'll understand later. The same phrase my mother had used my entire life. Delaney will understand. Delaney doesn't mind. Delaney is fine. On Garrett's nightstand, the gold foil birthday invitation sat propped against his lamp. Celebrating 30 years of Brooke. He'd kept it. He was looking forward to it. I closed the laptop, lay down beside him, stared at the ceiling. I understood perfectly. Brooke called me on a Thursday afternoon. She was breathless with excitement, the way she always got when something was about to be about her. Del, have you seen the venue? Mom took me for a walkthrough yesterday. It's insane. The stone terrace, the fairy lights, the wine cellar. I can't believe she found it. How did she find it? I don't know. Brooke laughed. She said she had a connection. You know, Mom. She always figures it out. Brooke talked for 20 minutes. Her dress, custom, gold, floor length. Her playlist, a mix of 90s pop and jazz standards. Her photo wall, a timeline of her life from birth to 30, printed on canvas panels. She described the seating chart, the party favors, the cake. 3 tiers, a gold B monogram on top. She did not mention my wedding. Not the date, not the venue, not whether any of this conflicted with my plans. 20 minutes of talking, and my name came up exactly once, when she asked if I could help carry boxes during setup. Of course, I said. After I hung up, I sat with the phone in my lap and thought about whether Brooke knew, whether she'd seen the authorization letter, whether she'd asked even once where the money was coming from. I decided it didn't matter. Knowing and not knowing are the same thing when you never bother to ask. Brooke had spent 30 years accepting whatever arrived in front of her, cars, tuition, apartments, parties, without questioning the source. The deposit was just the latest delivery. I opened my encrypted folder, added a note under Brooke's name. 2 words. Willful ignorance. Then I closed the laptop and started making dinner. Garrett would be home soon. I had a role to play. I want to pause here and ask you something. If your parents took $80,000, money you saved over 6 years, working overtime and skipping vacations, and gave it to your sibling without asking, what would be the first thing you'd do? Would you call them out at the dinner table? Go silent and cut them off? Or do what I did? Call a lawyer and start building a file. Drop your answer in the comments. I'll tell you what happened next. 10 days before the party, I drove to my parents' house with a gift bag for Brooke, a scented candle set I'd ordered online, the kind of gift that says I'm participating without saying I care. Mom and Brooke were out shopping for last-minute decorations. The driveway held only Dad's sedan. I let myself in through the garage, found Dad in his home office, reviewing documents. I brought him a cup of coffee from the kitchen. We talked about the weather, about his consulting work, about nothing. His phone rang. He excused himself and stepped into the hallway. I had maybe 90 seconds. The filing cabinet was where it had always been. Old oak frame, brass handles, the same cabinet that had been in his office since I was 8 years old. I used to think it held important legal work, deeds, contracts, filings from cases that mattered. I wasn't wrong about that. 3rd folder down. The tab read, Vineyard Authorization. Inside, the original forged letter. 1 page. My name at the top. I, Delaney Palmer, hereby authorize the transfer of my existing reservation. My signature at the bottom. Except it wasn't mine. I photographed the front, then the back. Then a close-up of the signature. The P in Palmer looped at the top. My P has never looped. But I'd seen that loop 1,000 times on my father's legal correspondence, on his Christmas cards, on the notes he left on the kitchen counter when I was growing up. He'd practiced. I could see the confidence in the ink. This wasn't a rushed forgery. It was careful work from a man who'd spent 40 years signing other people's names to documents. I placed the letter back, exactly as it was, closed the drawer, returned to the kitchen. When Dad came back from his call, I was sipping coffee and smiling. 12 days. I went to work, wrote code, attended stand-ups, ate lunch at my desk. My manager asked if I was okay. I'd been quieter than usual. I told her I was focused on a deadline. That was true. Just not the deadline she was thinking of. At home, I lay next to Garrett at night and watched him scroll through his phone. I wondered if the messages were from my mother. If they were planning something else I didn't know about. If there was another folder in another cabinet with another version of my name on it. I didn't check. I didn't need to. I had enough. Margot called every few days with updates. The party preparations were on schedule. Catering confirmed for 300. Flower delivery set for the morning of. The live string quartet had submitted their playlist. "Your mom called again," Margot said on day 8. "She wants to add a late-night dessert station, another 6,000. 6,000. On top of the cocktail hour extension, on top of the custom favors, on top of my $80,000. "Let her," I said. Claire was ready. The civil complaint was drafted, reviewed, and filed with the county clerk under seal. The criminal referral for forgery had been submitted to the district attorney's office. A process server named Danny, licensed, bonded, experienced, was briefed and scheduled. On my desk at home, the booking confirmation sat in its frame. Cream cardstock, copper embossing, Stone Terrace Vineyard. The name on the reservation was Delaney Palmer. It had never changed. Margot had never processed the transfer. The vineyard was mine. The evidence was ready. The party was in 12 days. I went back to writing code, 7 days before the party. My mother called. "Honey, I need you at the vineyard early on Saturday for setup. You're so much better at organizing than Brooke. You know how she gets overwhelmed." "Of course, Mom." There was a pause. Then, "Also, I've been thinking, maybe we should push your wedding date back a few months. Just so there's no overlap. We don't want to steal Brooke's thunder." She said it the way she said everything, as though the decision had already been made and my agreement was a formality. "Push your wedding back. Your sister's birthday party at the venue you paid for is more important than the wedding you've spent 6 years planning." "Sure, Mom. Whatever works for the family. See? This is why you're my rock. Brooke could never handle things the way you do. My rock. The thing you stand on. The thing you take for granted because it never moves." After the call, I sat on my kitchen floor. The tile was cold. The house was quiet. Garrett was working late. Or wherever Garrett went when he said he was working late. I didn't cry. I didn't call Claire or Margot. I sat with the silence the way you sit with an old injury that's finally been diagnosed. There's relief in knowing the name of the thing that's been hurting you. My mother had called me her rock for 32 years. She had never once asked whether the rock wanted to be carried instead. I stood up, opened my laptop, opened the folder I'd labeled birthday present. 6 days. Claire and I met on Tuesday, 4 days before the party. Her office. Same succulent on the windowsill. Same reading glasses on the desk. "Everything's ready," she said. "Civil complaint filed and sealed. Danny, the process server, will be positioned as a bartender on Margot's staff. He'll wear the vineyard uniform. Nobody will notice him until it's time." Margot had handled the logistics on her end. She'd reserved a small room at the back of the venue, a wine library with a leather couch and a locked door. "In case you need a minute after," she'd told me. The evidence package was complete. Forensic handwriting report. Photographs of the forged authorization letter. Front, back, close-up of the signature. Garrett's forwarded email from my mother. Security camera screenshots of my parents at the vineyard office, my original booking confirmation, all printed, all organized, all inside a manila envelope that weighed almost nothing and contained almost everything. "Your mother asked you to give a toast," Claire said. Not a question. She did. "That's when Danny moves. When you finish speaking, I'll signal him. He serves your parents and Garrett simultaneously." 3 envelopes. 3 people. All in front of the crowd. What about Brooke? Brooke isn't named in the suit. She didn't sign the forged documents, but she'll be standing right there when it happens. I looked at the manila envelope on Claire's desk. Inside it, the sum total of what my family had cost me. Dollars, years, silence, compliance. All of it documented, all of it real. "Mom asked me to give the toast," I said again. Quieter this time. Claire nodded. "And you will." She had no idea what I was going to say. Neither did my mother. The difference was, Claire trusted me. Saturday. I woke at 5 in the morning. The room was dark. Garrett was still sleeping, one arm across the pillow where my head had been. I showered, dressed. Navy blazer over a white blouse, tailored slacks, small earrings, minimal makeup. I looked professional, not festive. That was intentional. In the mirror, I looked at myself the way you look at someone you're about to trust with something important. 32 years of being the good daughter. Today, I was going to be the honest one. Garrett stirred. "You're up early." "Set up duty, Mom's orders." He rolled over, went back to sleep. I watched him for 3 seconds. Then I picked up my car keys and left. The drive to the hill country took 55 minutes. The road was quiet. Live oaks lining both sides, morning fog sitting low in the valleys. I didn't play music. I didn't rehearse what I was going to say. I'd already rehearsed it. Twice in the shower, once in Claire's office, and 17 times in my head during the previous week. Margot was waiting at the vineyard gate. She didn't hug me. She just nodded. "Everything's in place." I walked the grounds. The crew had been there since dawn. Gold centerpieces on every table, a 3-tier cake on a marble stand, the gold B monogram catching the early light, a photo booth framed in white flowers, string lights threaded through the oak branches. $80,000 of my money, decorated to celebrate my sister. I found the family table, placed the manila envelope under my chair, adjusted it so it wouldn't slide. The caterer passed by and mentioned that all charges were being billed to the Palmer account. My name was on that account. My money had opened it. My parents had spent it without asking. I thanked the caterer and went to find more coffee. Guests began arriving at 6. Cars lined the vineyard road for a quarter mile. Sedans, SUVs, a few town cars, 300 invitations, and it looked like everyone had been accepted. My mother stood at the entrance in a cream designer dress, greeting people like a hostess at a charity gala. She kissed cheeks. She squeezed hands. She pointed guests toward the cocktail terrace with practiced grace. This was her stage, and she had been rehearsing for months. My father stood beside her in a charcoal suit. He shook hands. He smiled. He did everything he always did. Stand next to Linda Palmer and agree with whatever was happening. Brooke arrived at 6:30 in a gold dress that caught every light in the vineyard. The crowd applauded. She waved like she was accepting an award. 2 of her friends flanked her with champagne flutes already in hand. I stood near the bar and watched. Garrett found me. "You look tense." He put his hand on the small of my back. "Just tired from setup." Claire arrived at 6:45. Gray suit. Small clutch. She found her seat near the back of the terrace and ordered a glass of white wine. Nobody noticed her. That was the point. Danny was already behind the bar. Black vest, vineyard logo on the lapel. He looked like every other staff member. He poured drinks. He smiled. He waited. Margot moved through the crowd, checking on vendors, adjusting flower arrangements, making sure the string quartet had water. She caught my eye once across the terrace. A small nod. Nothing more. 300 people gathered under the oak trees, toasting Brooke Palmer's 30th birthday on a stone terrace that still belonged to me. The air smelled like rosemary and warm stone, and the first hint of hill country evening. The string quartet played Vivaldi. Wine flowed from the vineyard's own cellar, the same cellar I'd tasted from during my 3 visits before booking. Every detail of this evening had been built on a foundation I'd laid, and nobody at these tables, except Margot, Claire, Danny, and me, knew it. The sun was setting behind the hills. The light turned the stone terrace gold. It was, by any measure, a beautiful party. I finished my water, set the glass down, checked my watch. The toast was after dessert, 2 hours. Dinner was 5 courses. Butternut squash soup, arugula salad with grilled peaches, pan-seared salmon, a beef tenderloin with red wine reduction, and dessert, a raspberry tart that my mother had personally selected after 3 tastings. Between the salad and the salmon, my mother stood. She tapped her wine glass with a fork. The terrace quieted. "I want to say something," she began. "Richard and I have always believed that family comes first. Everything we do, every decision we make, is for our girls." The crowd murmured approval. A man at the next table leaned to his wife. "Such devoted parents. Tonight is about celebrating our beautiful Brooke." Mom's voice caught, practiced, calibrated. Turning 30 is a milestone, and we wanted to give her a night she'd never forget. Brooke stood up, eyes glistening. "I can't believe Mom and Dad did all this for me." I clapped along with everyone else. My hands made the right sound, my face made the right shape. A woman at the adjacent table turned to me, gray-haired, pearl earrings, country club set. "Your parents are incredible. I wish my family was this close." I smiled at her. "You have no idea." Garrett's arm went around my shoulder. I let it stay. He squeezed. I didn't squeeze back. Across the terrace, my father was pouring wine for a table of his former colleagues. He still hadn't looked at me. Not during cocktails. Not during the first course. Not once during my mother's speech. He moved through the evening the same way he'd moved through my childhood. Present in body, absent in accountability. The dessert plates were cleared. The string quartet shifted to something slower. My mother stood again. It was time. "And now," my mother said, her voice warm and bright, "I'd like to invite someone very special to say a few words about our birthday girl." She turned to me. "Delaney, would you do the honors?" The terrace applauded. Brooke smiled at me from across the table. "Love you, sis." I stood up, reached under my chair, picked up the manila envelope. Nobody noticed it. They were watching my face, not my hands. I walked to the microphone stand at the edge of the terrace. The vineyard stretched out behind me. Rolling hills, the last orange glow of sunset. Oak trees casting long shadows across 300 upturned faces. I adjusted the microphone. It clicked softly against the stand. "Thank you, Mom." My voice came through the speakers clear and level. No waver, no rehearsal stiffness. Just my voice, the way it sounded when I was at work explaining code to junior developers. Professional, measured, calm. "I do have something to say about this party." I set the manila envelope on the podium. "But first, I need to tell you all about a deposit." The word deposit hung in the air like a glass someone had dropped, but that hadn't shattered yet. My mother's smile stayed in place, but her eyes narrowed by a fraction, the way they always did when something was about to not go according to her plan. My father's hand stopped midway to his wine glass. Garrett shifted in his chair. 300 people waited. The string quartet had finished their piece. The terrace was quiet except for the distant sound of crickets in the vineyard and the soft hum of the fairy lights overhead. I opened the envelope. "Before I tell you what happened next, I need to ask you something. Have you ever stood in front of a room full of people with the truth in your hands, knowing that once you said it, nothing would go back to the way it was?" That's where I was. 1 microphone, 300 guests, a manila envelope, and a family that had been lying to me for 32 years. Tell me in the comments, would you have opened it? 6 years ago, I said. I started saving for my wedding. Every quarterly bonus, every freelance project, every overtime check. $80,000. I paused. Let the number settle. I booked this vineyard, this exact terrace, for my wedding to Garrett Ross. 7 months ago. I wired the deposit directly and received a booking confirmation. The reservation has been in my name ever since. Murmurs moved through the crowd. Confused glances. Brooke's smile froze. She looked at my mother. My mother didn't look back. 3 weeks ago, the owner of this vineyard called me. Her name is Margot Ellison. She was my classmate in our computer science program at UT Austin. I held up the first page from the envelope. A photocopy of the forged authorization letter. Margot told me that 2 people came to her office with a signed letter, authorizing the transfer of my booking to Brooke's birthday party. My name is on this letter. My signature is at the bottom. I set the page on the podium. Except I never signed it. My mother stood. Delaney, this isn't the time or the place for... This is exactly the time. My voice didn't rise. Same register. Same pace. And this is exactly the place. Because this place, this venue, was paid for with my money. I held up the second page. A forensic handwriting analysis confirmed that the signature on this letter was not written by me. The uppercase P contains a closed loop that appears in none of my known signature samples. I looked at my father. But it does appear in yours. Because you, a retired real estate attorney, drafted this authorization letter using your own legal templates and forged my name at the bottom. Richard Palmer's face went white. His wine glass trembled in his hand. Gasps spread through the terrace. Phones appeared. Someone at a back table held theirs up like they were recording. My mother's composure cracked at the edges. You're making a scene. This is your sister's night. I'm not finished. The terrace went still. Garrett Ross, my fiancé, borrowed $45,000 from my parents 8 months ago. A personal loan. No bank involved. Just my father's legal stationery and Garrett's signature. Garrett pushed his chair back from the table. The legs scraped against the stone. That loan gave my parents leverage. When they decided to take my wedding deposit and give it to Brooke's party, they told Garrett. He didn't warn me. He didn't argue. He stayed quiet. Because he owed them $45,000, and silence was cheaper than repayment. Delaney, Garrett started. I found the email, I continued. Same voice, same pace. Mom wrote to Garrett directly. Don't mention the deposit to Delaney. She'll understand later. The woman with the pearl earrings at the next table set down her champagne glass. Her mouth was open. She didn't close it. I'm not doing this out of anger. I said it to the crowd, not to my family. I'm doing this because every person in this room deserves to know what this party cost, and who actually paid for it. I set the manila envelope on the podium. Open. Contents visible. This envelope contains the forged authorization, the handwriting analysis, the loan agreement, security camera footage from this vineyard's office, and my original booking confirmation. On the centerpiece of the family table, the gold foil birthday invitation caught the fairy lights. Celebrating 30 years of Brooke. 300 gold envelopes, paid for with money I'd saved since I was 26. My father still hadn't spoken. He sat with both hands flat on the table, eyes focused on his plate. My mother's face had turned a deep shade of red. The controlled hostess voice was gone. What replaced it was something rawer. The voice she used when no guests were around. How dare you? She stepped forward, her cream dress catching on the edge of her chair. How dare you do this to your sister, after everything your father and I have done for you? What have you done for me, Mom? Not accusatory, not sarcastic. A genuine question, asked at conversational volume. She stammered. We raised you. We gave you a home. We gave you... You gave Brooke a home. You gave Brooke a tuition. You gave Brooke a car, an apartment, and now a $100,000 birthday party. I paused. You gave me a savings account that you drained whenever it was convenient. My mother turned to the crowd, arms spread. She's lying. She's always been jealous of her sister. This is what jealousy looks like. But the crowd had seen the documents. The photocopy of the forged letter was still on the podium. A woman in the front row had already taken a photograph of it. A man near the bar was showing his phone to the person next to him. My father hadn't moved. His hands were flat. His eyes were down. The man who'd drafted the authorization, who'd forged the signature, who'd spent 40 years avoiding confrontation. He sat perfectly still and said nothing. My mother's eyes found mine across the terrace. For 1 second, just one, the mask slipped. What I saw underneath wasn't guilt, wasn't remorse. It was fear. Pure, compressed fear. The look of someone who has spent decades controlling a narrative and just watched it collapse in front of 300 witnesses. Then the fear was gone, replaced by fury. She pointed at me. "You ungrateful." A man at the third table, someone I recognized as my father's former law partner, set his napkin down and pushed his chair back. Not leaving, just creating distance. The woman beside him placed her hand on his arm. They exchanged a look that said everything about what they'd just realized about the man they used to work with. My mother's voice kept going. "This family gave you everything. Everything. And this is how you repay us?" "You gave me a role, Mom," I said. Still calm, still level. "You gave me the role of the daughter who pays for things and doesn't complain. And when I stopped playing that role, you forged my signature and played it for me." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. For the first time in my life, my mother had nothing to say. Margot stepped forward. Margot took the microphone from the stand. She held it the way she held everything. Steady, practical, without performance. "My name is Margot Ellison. I own this vineyard." She spoke to the crowd, not to my family. "Delaney Palmer booked her wedding here 7 months ago and paid an $80,000 deposit via wire transfer." She paused. "Let that register." 3 weeks ago, Linda and Richard Palmer came to my office with a signed authorization letter requesting the booking be transferred to a birthday event. The signature on that letter did not match the one I have on file. I contacted Delaney directly because I recognized her name. We attended the same engineering program at UT Austin. She turned slightly toward my mother. "The transfer was never processed. The booking remains in Delaney Palmer's name. It was always in her name." Silence. The kind of silence where you can hear 300 people breathing. Then someone at a back table clapped. Once. Twice. A woman 2 tables over joined. Then a man near the bar. It didn't become applause. It was something quieter. An acknowledgement. My mother's voice cut through it. "This is ridiculous. Margot, you don't know what you're talking about. This is a family matter." Margot looked at her. "I know what a forged signature looks like, Mrs. Palmer. And forged documents submitted to a business aren't a family matter. They're a legal one." She set the microphone back on the stand and stepped away. Calm. Done. Claire caught Danny's eye from across the terrace. A small nod. Nothing dramatic. Danny set his tray on the bar, removed his service apron, walked across the stone patio with 3 white envelopes in his hand. He approached my mother first. "Mrs. Linda Palmer?" She looked at him, still flushed, still vibrating with anger. "What?" He handed her the envelope. "You've been served." He walked to my father. "Mr. Richard Palmer?" My father took the envelope without looking up. His fingers were steady. The rest of him was not. Danny turned to Garrett. "Mr. Garrett Ross?" Garrett stared at the envelope like it was something alive. He took it, didn't open it, held it in both hands on his lap. 3 envelopes, 3 people, 3 different reactions. My mother tore hers open. Read the first page. Her face changed, from anger to something older and colder. Understanding. My father didn't open his. He placed it flat on the table beside his unused dessert fork. Claire stood. She didn't move to the microphone. She just raised her voice enough to carry. "The civil complaint alleges fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation. A criminal referral for forgery has also been filed with the Travis County District Attorney's Office." The terrace was silent. 300 people holding glasses they'd stopped drinking from, watching a family come apart in real time under the fairy lights. Nobody moved to help my parents. Nobody stood up to defend them. They sat in the silence they had earned. Brooke stood up, tears streaming. Not the performative kind she used when she wanted attention. These were real, the kind that come when the floor drops out, and you realize you've been standing on someone else's foundation. I didn't know. Her voice was thin. Delaney, I swear I didn't know about the signature. I looked at my sister. Gold dress, gold monogram, gold centerpieces paid for with my money. Did you ever ask where the money came from? She didn't answer. In 30 years, Brooke, you have never once asked where anything came from. She sat back down. The gold dress settled around her like something deflating. Guests began to stir. Some stood and walked toward the exit in small groups, speaking in low voices. Others stayed in their seats, unsure whether leaving was appropriate or whether staying made them witnesses to something they'd rather not have seen. A woman I recognized from my mother's country club approached the family table. Silver hair, tasteful earrings. She leaned toward my mother. Linda, is this true? My mother straightened, reflexive. It's a misunderstanding. Delaney is overreacting. She's always been dramatic. The woman looked at the documents spread across the podium. The forged letter, the handwriting analysis, the security camera printout of Linda and Richard walking into the vineyard office with a leather folder. She looked back at my mother. Then she turned and walked away. She didn't say goodbye. 3 more people followed her toward the parking lot within the next minute. I picked up the microphone one last time. I didn't come here to ruin anyone's night. My voice was steady, the same tone I'd used at the beginning. I came here because my family decided that my money, my wedding, and my silence were theirs to take. I paused. They weren't. To everyone here, I'm sorry you had to witness this, but I am not sorry I said it. I set the microphone on the stand, picked up my purse from my chair, left the manila envelope on the podium. The evidence could stay. It belonged to the room now. I walked off the terrace, down the stone path that wound through the vineyard. Oak trees on both sides, fairy lights above, the smell of crushed grapes and warm stone and evening air. Margot was waiting at the gate. She didn't say anything. She just fell into step beside me, and we walked to the parking lot together. In my car, I opened the glove compartment. Inside, the original booking confirmation, cream cardstock, copper embossing, Stone Terrace Vineyard. My name, my deposit, my venue. It had always been mine. I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off. The vineyard lights glowed behind me, warm and golden, like a house someone else lived in. I looked at my left hand. The engagement ring. A round-cut diamond on a white gold band. Garrett had given it to me 14 months ago at a restaurant in downtown Austin. He'd gotten down on one knee. I'd said yes before he finished the question. That ring was bought with money he'd borrowed from my parents. Everything connected. Everything circled back to the same source. I slid the ring off my finger, held it for a moment. It was lighter than I remembered. I placed it in the cup holder between the seats. A small metallic sound. Final. I started the engine, pulled out of the gravel lot. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. The following week was quiet. The kind of quiet that follows a controlled demolition. Dust settling, structures rearranging, the sound of things being cleared away. Linda and Richard Palmer retained a defense attorney within 48 hours. The civil suit was pending. The forgery referral was under review by the Travis County District Attorney's Office. Their country club, the same one that had provided half the guest list for Brooke's party, sent a letter. Membership would not be renewed. No explanation offered, though none was needed. 3 other families who had booked events through my mother's social network quietly canceled within the week. My father's consulting firm issued a statement. Richard Palmer is no longer affiliated with Palmer Real Estate Advisory. His real estate license was flagged for an ethics review. The man who had spent 40 years building a reputation on contracts and signatures was now being investigated for forging one. Garrett moved out while I was at work on Tuesday. He left the apartment key on the counter. Next to it, the $45,000 loan agreement and a yellow sticky note. I'm sorry. 2 words that cost nothing and changed nothing. Claire added the loan to the civil complaint. I sent one text to Garrett. The engagement is over. Don't contact me. He didn't reply. I didn't expect him to. Brooke called on Thursday, 4 days after the party. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask how I was doing. She asked one question. Why did you have to do it there? I let the call go to voicemail. Margot texted me a link that weekend. The Austin American-Statesman had run a piece. Venue owner exposes family fraud at birthday party. The story was short, 200 words, but it traveled. Margot's bookings increased by 40% the following month. She sent a follow-up text. Turns out, integrity is good for business. The wedding was still booked. Same vineyard, same stone terrace, new date. The following spring. Smaller guest list. No family. Margot, Claire, colleagues and friends who had earned the word. The deposit was confirmed back under my full control. $80,000, still in my name. I rebooked the wedding for the following spring. Same stone terrace, same oak trees, same sunset view. But the guest list was different now. 60 people instead of 300. Margot was my maid of honor. Or, as she preferred, venue security and emotional support. Claire sent a congratulations card with a note inside. Best closing argument I've ever witnessed at a birthday party. I didn't send a wedding invitation to Cedar Park. There was no text to delete 3 times. There was no decision to agonize over. The door was closed. Not slammed, just closed, the way you close a filing cabinet when you're done with what's inside. The filing cabinet in my father's home office was probably still in the same place. Same oak frame, same brass handles. I wondered what was inside it now. Legal notices, probably, instead of forged documents. 3 weeks after the party. My phone rang. Mom. I almost didn't pick up. Then I did. One last time. Delaney, this has gone far enough. Her voice was clipped, controlled. The hostess voice was back, but strained. You've made your point. Now drop the lawsuit and let's move on as a family. Moving on is exactly what I'm doing. You're going to regret this. Blood is thicker than... Blood doesn't give you the right to forge my name, Mom. Silence on the line. I could hear her breathing. The same kitchen, the same phone. The same woman who had called me her rock and then stood on me. Your father and I did what we thought was best. For Brooke. Another silence. Longer this time. I didn't fill it. I'd spent 32 years filling her silences. That was over. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up. Blocked the number. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. The kind that comes when you've spent your whole life translating someone's behavior into love and finally realized the translation was wrong. She'd said I wouldn't mind. And she was right in the end. I didn't mind anymore. Not because I'd forgiven them, because I'd stopped giving them things to take. The booking confirmation was still on my desk. Cream cardstock, copper embossing. The name hadn't changed. It never would. If someone tells you that you won't mind while they take what's yours, believe them. They're telling you exactly how little they think of you, and that is all the permission you need to protect yourself. That's my story. 6 years of saving, 3 weeks of planning, and one toast that changed everything. If this reminded you that your boundaries matter, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.